Welcome back to the episode of the Thirst for More podcast. Prompt to have host and guest here, Kalil Sherrod. We met back in the Swiss Symposium. I can't remember how many years this was, maybe 2 or 3 years ago when it was still in Columbus. We connected kind of over the dinner bar scene as most things happen with Swiss. And Kalil is currently practicing out of the Atlanta, Georgia area, working with athletes of all levels, as really focusing on the basketball side. And we really connected over his conjugate work. So we'll be discussing all that as well. Khalil, how you doing, man?
I'm doing good. Pleasure to be
Good,
here.
good. So everybody kind of has a frame, kind of what's going on with you and kind of where you've been with your sports performance journey and coaching. Kind of let us know how you got started and kind of to where you're currently at now, kind of that process of where you're currently at in Atlanta.
I think like a lot of people, they played a sport, especially if they weren't at the D1 level. So I played D2 basketball, and like a lot of us, it was like an athletic trainer. For me, some people got a strength coach, but it's like, especially at the lower levels, it's always like if you do something going in, you're like, I at least know this is bad. So that kind of started like my research or like more diving into it. And that's when I stumbled upon, or I really just started trying to go into the West Side approach and reading everything and getting the books. And I started literally just testing all of it out on myself. I think I was the only one that didn't have like an injury that kept them from playing that year. And this was when I was 20 to 21. And so I was at Villa Maria up in Buffalo.
Okay.
And then I started playing semi-pro like a year or two before I had moved down to Atlanta. And so that was like 2018. And in 2019, I was like me and my wife, well, girlfriend, then now wife, said, okay, well, we're gonna move to Atlanta. Like I was supposed to play on a semi-pro team, and this was 2019. The season's supposed to start in March, and that's when COVID happened. And, I was just like, I woke up one day, I was like, yeah, I think I'm done. Like 25, I'm 5'10". There's kids that are 6'6" playing my same position that are 19. And I always knew I had the passion for strength conditioning and training as both my parents were trainers too. And so I kind of knew I always wanted to do it after. And I was thinking, I was like I have friends and I have clients that play overseas. And I was like, I don't really want to do that grind. I'd rather get a earlier start on what I kind of want to do after. So I started training at a facility that was literally just a basketball facility, didn't have any equipment. And I became like the head strength coach there. And I like got equipment and started training athletes. Then I moved on to another place, and I was there for almost 3 years, training all athletes of every background. And that's like when I really found out how much I loved it because I found out that because at first I was like, like all I kind of wanted to do, or my focus is like, oh, it would be like awesome to like work for a team, especially like at a pro level, maybe just for basketball clients. And then what I discovered is that I don't know if my long-term goal would ever to be that now. Like I'm not saying I wouldn't take that off the table. Hey, we want to pay you like six
Yeah.
figures to do that. Yes, but like I think at the end, my end goal for me and my wife actually is to own our own gym because I want to train a vast array of like different types of clients. And especially like I don't want to be limited to one gender or one age too, not just the sport. Because it's like I have so much fun training like my volleyball girls. Because you get them strong, they automatically get extremely good and stand out in their sport. It's like it's funny how that works with sports that like notoriously don't lift. It's so much easier to make them better because you're getting a blank check or whatever, however you could say it, where it's just like this is really easy to kind of make this person a lot better. And then like, my swimmers or track athletes, like it's so much fun training all those different sports. Now, like always, I think like typical, there's always going to be like whatever sport you play, parents, athletes, coaches will trust you more for that sport. So naturally, I
Right.
just get more basketball players. That's my background. And I will say, like, from a perspective of like, I've watched and trained that sport myself. I do know the ins and outs of that so much better. So it's a little bit easier for me to talk the lingo of the actual sport and talk about like why this is going to correlate. But like I had like, you know, I swim as much as anybody else when it came to I had a pool growing up. But you asked me to do like a down and back on a 50-meter pool. It's going to be one of the slowest times you ever see. But I had a kid that went from 100 something ranked in the state to the 40s and was qualifying for the Junior Olympics. I know nothing about swimming, but it was really simple. I just had to watch, and I said, okay, your start sucks because your broad jump sucks when we when we tested you, because you can't get off that block. Okay, and then your strength endurance in your upper body is kind of crap, and just you're generally overall weak and not very explosive. Raise his vertical. Now people don't think obviously you don't jump in a pool, but we raise his explosiveness from 23 or 24 inch vertical to 33, which is like elite when it comes to swimmers, especially a
Yeah.
high school swimmer. And wow, you know, like it went, all this stuff went up, and I was just like, it's. I can see why Louis was like love track and field because it was so. Here, does it directly correlate? Is it working? You know, where other sports where there's so many factors, but so and then I got sick with cancer 3 years ago now, basically almost kind of to the day, and that kind of put a halt on everything. Where basically I was just all I could do was mostly online training. Like I tried a lot of in person basically the first year, and then it at different points it was like so sick where I couldn't even like work out, and it was hard for me to do anything in person. So I have been doing online stuff, and now I'm back and healthy. It seems like the cancer's gone, and now I'm going to be starting work like full time in person. But it was kind of cool because that time away from being in person, it made me read more and be way better at online programming because I got better at being obsessed with like trying to anticipate any problems or hiccups that can happen. And like if you look at like the length of like besides that 4 to 6 week block that I'm writing, what happens like above like the mobility I write, the way I plan out the mesocycles for months and a year out, all the different rules and lingo, like all the abbreviations and gym lingo that a new person needs to know. Like I created documents that I started making programs and then just reading even more and more. So it's kind of like it was a blessing and a curse when it came to something like that because now I feel like I know so much more just because it was like I couldn't experiment anymore in person. I had to read more and really like study even more to try to say when I come back I want to be better in some way, you know. So that kind of brings us up to date. Yeah.
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 So how did you initially discover the conjugate method and Westside Barbell? Like what was your introduction into that? Was it like a coach or online Google search? How did
Well,
that happen?
so when I was 19, I was working at a crunch, and a guy that I became like really close with, he's just put me on to like, hey, why don't you start powerlifting with me? And he came from a gym in Jersey. Oh, you probably know it. It's the gym that Larry Wheels came from. It's
It's,
the dude, the owner's a geared lifter.
it's a public gym though.
No, I think it's private. I think it's
Uh,
private.
Gaglione Strength,
Oh,
maybe?
yep, that's it. So
Yeah.
he came from there. And he put me on to just like powerlifting and everything. And I went to a few of his meets and I was like, I already started like, oh, this is fun. And I finally started like really learning because my parents' background as trainers were just bodybuilding, right? So I had a good background in that. Like that probably, which I feel like gave me a very good understanding of the importance of the accessories when it comes to training my athletes and my powerlifters as well. Because I think a lot of people like butcher that part of their program, and a lot of times, especially beginners and intermediates, they're lacking muscle groups. So I'm kind of muscle mass, and so I'm kind of glad I did that. But so he put me on to powerlifting, and then we were talking one day, and I don't know how it came up, but he started talking about Westside, and then he was talking about like how strong they are and stuff, and I was like, well, why don't you do it? And he was like, bro, it's too much math. So, but that made me think. I'm like, but if they're so good, okay, it can be complicated, but that means it's difficult. So I was 19, 20 then, and so I go up to the D2 school, right? And this is when I'm 20 now, I turned 21. And like I said, I was just really kind of like, I already knew that we didn't have a strength coach. And then I found out it was going to be just the athletic trainer putting us through bullshit workout. So I was like, let me buy the books and start kind of researching. And then that's how I kind of just started doing a deep dive, started with the book of methods, the bench press deadlift manual, got the explosive jumping book, got all the DVDs, and just started kind of becoming obsessed and more obsessed with that than even I probably was with basketball. And I think in the back of my mind, I've always, playing point guard, you're kind of the player coach. And I kind of already knew from early on, before even talking about training, that I wanted to be a coach. But then it was like, once I started diving into that realm, I was like, I feel like I identify with these guys more than I do with like the basketball people.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I got started.
Gotcha. So let's go to focus on just the basketball training here for a little bit, because I've got some things I'm really curious here. So what do you think are the biggest misconceptions that coaches and players have about basketball strength training just in general?
I think probably maybe the biggest thing is that, and that's probably across all sports, but in a sport that is predominantly dominated at the pro level, average height is 6'6". One of the things is, it's going to stunt your growth if you start earlier than like, I always hear a magical number, but it's usually between 16 and 18. It's like when you should start. Any earlier, you're going to stunt your growth. And from what I understand, reading super training and hearing from other good strength coaches, is that I've heard that it actually can help and aid growth because you will grow bones quicker and faster because your body's trying to adjust to the external load. So just like usually like bone density increases between old people when they lift weights, from what I understand, it actually can accelerate growth. Now, what I do understand is that here's the caveat. It's like maybe too much spinal compression, back squatting specifically, that can hinder the disc. So I get maybe that. But what people don't understand is that first you should establish a base, and that base does not have to involve a barbell in any movement, really.
Right.
And second, you can get extremely strong before touching a barbell, which the more and more I learn, probably will do the athlete a better service in doing it that way. Where then by the time they get to the barbell, they're going to get more out of it and they'll be in a safer position. Another one is that it's going to hinder your shot or most of your shooting. What I learned was I started working once I stopped playing in college and I started playing semi-pro, was when I started working with Joe Lasco. He was the guy that was the stat guy at Westside, right?
Yeah.
And started training with him. So I like really got like a firsthand like how they kind of do it up there. Was my passing ability was night and day. And I would say my bench shouldn't increase by like a ton, but I definitely got more explosive, was more the focus. Like my bench probably went from 225 to 255, but like my explosive power went up dramatically lower body, but especially my upper body. So my passing, especially with one hand, it was like night and day. And then my strength endurance, because especially in upper body, we focus on a lot. So in defense, like my arms would never get tired. All the ball handling you have to do as a guard, I could do more of. And my shooting became more accurate and from distance more accurate, and I could shoot farther. So people don't realize, especially with a good strength coach, your body will quickly adjust. But obviously, when you first do it, yes, you're going to be sore for a few days. That doesn't mean all of a sudden your shot is just going to go to crap. Yes, it will be tough, like I was saying, like the first few days. But once your body adjusts, and if you have a good strength coach that's not basically just making you do bodybuilding, you're not going to be so sore that you're not going to also be to do your drills. But I always find it funny because people will use outliers when it comes to any sport. Like a person like Allen Iverson saying them weights are just too damn heavy. And it's like, yeah, but your best athletes that play the longest and are the top of the sport, they all lifted weights. Now, they may not all have done it like how me and you may have done it,
Right.
But they all realized that, especially as they got older, to stay healthy, to avoid injuries, to keep muscle mass, to get stronger, they obviously had to lift weights. And a lot of basketball players, because you play so often, practice so much, if it has to be before or after a game, they are still doing it in season. The great ones.
Right.
So don't tell me that your kid who ain't anywhere close to genetic freak doesn't need to also do the weight room. And I'll argue in today's day, they will pay you if you can jump high or you can shoot a three. And jumping high comes from the weight room if you ain't naturally gifted. So start in the weight room. Second, you're going to get hurt. Anybody will get hurt doing anything wrong with a bad teacher or a bad coach. So get yourself a good strength coach, and you'll actually limit your injuries, right? And I'd say the early injuries with the kids, as I think I've seen you post videos about, is probably have more to do with the fact that their basketball is definitely one of them, where they don't play anything besides basketball now, starting at like 4, but also like not doing anything in the weight room for those reasons that we just talked about. It's like, oh, you're having jumper's knees super, super early, but you're not even playing or practicing as much as like even I did when I was a kid. Well, your quads, hamstrings, calves are all extremely weak. And because you do the same repetitive movement patterns all the time, you're creating those injuries because you don't do anything besides basketball. So it's like the weight room is so easy to fix a lot of the problems, but you have a lot of sport coaches telling them not to, or sport coaches pretending to be strength coaches because they want to make extra money, and then they have a bad experience with it, and then they say, "Oh, weight training is not good for you," but it's like, no, you just had somebody that was terrible.
Yeah, I think another point like to that too is like, since you played basketball, the return on investment in the weight room for these guys is just insane. Like if you would tell LeBron James or any other basketball player that's at a high level that they could get the return on investments they get from the weight room, it's like for 1 or 2 hours a week, toward their shot or their dribbling or their passing or their free throws or whatever the shot or skill that you're working towards, like those are skills that take an insane amount of hours to master because it's such a fine motor pattern. And obviously you can shoot from anywhere on the floor. Like, I mean, you have people like Steph Curry that it seems like it's automatic, but like there's just the amount of shots that you can take is just unlimited, where like the weight room is just so general to even put in, like even in season for younger kids doing 1 day a week, like to maintain your vertical and keep your knees feeling good and your ankles feeling good. Like that is an insane value. And it's, at the end of the day, it's really not that much harder work. Like you're going to have some hard sets, but like 1 hour of strength training a week is not difficult on the hard scale, especially if you are coming with the right mindset. So like that's for me the biggest issue I always see, even just any sport in general, but basketball as well, like you're mentioning, is just getting them to buy into the return on investment piece is just like unheard of for me, why they can't understand that.
Oh, and that was another thing. Like my next article that I wrote for Lead FCS, um, they just told me they're switching like platforms now and stuff, so that kind of sucks. But it was actually on the importance of lifting in season and like maintaining your vertical. But it's like you probably experienced it across many sports, even at the D1 level. You'll have kids every single year that come back weaker, verticals lower, and they have to go to weight room 4 days a week. And I'm like, I get kids in season during high school 1 to 2 times, and we can at least maintain and sometimes get marginally better over that period of that season. And it's like, so the kids that just don't do anything, it's like, yeah. So you dropped immediately the volume that you're doing in the weight room, and you immediately increase the volume and intensity on the court. And you're like, I don't know why my knees, my Achilles, my back hurt now. And I'm not finishing my layups or dunks as high as I was. Well, you took the thing that prepared you to do those things or increased it initially, and you just took it away. I always tell them, it's like, you don't stop doing skill work in the off season. So why are you stop weight training in season? It doesn't mean you should go hard at both at the same time all year round, but you should periodically say, okay, in the off season, yes, I'm going to go hard in the weight room because obviously my basketball is coming down. Just like in season, I don't completely go away from it, but maybe instead of 4 days, it's 2 to 3. And maybe instead of focusing on the max effort stuff, it's more on the dynamic squats, deadlifts. And honestly, like I would tell kids, it's like, hey, it's okay. I'd rather you come in, and if you're a little beat up, it's like we don't have to max out. Maybe we just do accessories, we do mobility. But for you to just not do anything, that's just you being lazy, probably most of the time.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah. All right. So to kind of keep with that theme, though, so how do you adapt the conjugate method, the training methods from that system specifically for basketball athletes?
Okay, so for basketball, the big thing you usually have to watch out for is super tight hips, the taller they are, because typically the taller they are, especially like, let's say it's like a young kid in high school, if they're 6'6" and above, they're playing five. So they never get low in their defensive stance, which means if they're coming to you, they don't have a background in weight training, guess what? Those hips do not function at all. So the goal out of season would be mobility, and from a strength perspective, I think the main focus should be on gaining range of motion, because they will get hurt from the few instances when they have to dive for a ball or get low or guard a smaller guard, slash they're missing out probably on mobility that may cause their back maybe to hurt more on defense because their hips they can't get down. So it's just a bent over position. And maybe the bigger thing is, let's say that kid is 6'6", and that's where he stops growing. Guess what? Now you're only a two guard though when you go to college or the NBA. So we need to fix the part of, hey, you can't get low on defense, or you can't dribble low, and the coach is saying get low now. But if you don't have that physical requirement, we need to hurry up and fix that, because otherwise you're not going to be able to be drafted or get that scholarship. So what I always focus on, like with those guys, it's like the main first thing for like the taller people is fixing that mobility. And if they don't have a background in weight training, it's like, hey, let's eliminate walking out the weight, and focus on that range of motion through a belt squat or a goblet squat, and just try to get you good at actually moving up and down with your chest relatively up, get comfortable with your knees over your toes, working some of those split, the polygon stuff with the split stance or the step downs. And then it's like, if we establish that, okay, let's graduate to, let's see how low you can box squat with moderate weight. Okay, you can do a 3/4 squat really well. I want to focus on heavy-ish sets to that height, and then maybe follow up with to work that lack of range of motion with lighter weights that you can actually go up and down still. And then I kind of graduate them to maybe, okay, you can control to a parallel box. Like if they're above 6'6", I don't care about them really going below parallel, honestly. Because when you watch it, you're like, yeah, you're doing a lot more load. I mean, or the force that you have to apply and everything, and with your levers are way crazier than your average person. So if I can just get you to parallel with good form, with good weight, that's well and above beyond like what we want. The shorter they are, the more important I want it to be a little bit below parallel. And then for guys that are like, let's say between that 6 foot to 6'3", it's like, all right, can we get you to like a 12-inch box? Like really probably like not ass to grass, but somewhere in between that. If they have decent mobility, deadlift wise, we're trying to do speed pulls. A lot of times we're starting with a rack pull and a block pull, and then kind of working them down to the ground. If it's in season, probably mostly rack pulls or trap bar deadlifts.
Yeah.
And when I first start a guy, if he has the bracing capacity, I usually will start them with trap bar deadlift, because it's just a little bit easier, especially if you're talking group setting, where you can turn your back for a half a second and know they're not going to blow some shit up.
Yeah.
And then benching wise, I like to start everybody by learning how to use a straight bar first, especially if they don't have any shoulder issues, and especially if I'm getting them out of season. And then as we kind of go into season, bring more close grip, and then eventually mostly probably football bar. But it'll depend on, like I said, if they have any shoulder issues, and probably how much they're playing. So like if they're a bench player, I know most people will say this is like, the less you plan, the more we can kind of keep it how it is out of season. Because
Right.
what we're worried about, it's just like if I needed to fix something in your shot, you ain't playing anyway. So let's go through the tough time of the uncomfortability. And then when it's out of season, if it's a guy that's in shape, I don't do a ton of conditioning. If it's a guy that is out of shape, especially aerobically, we will do something with like try to take the poundage off, try to do, poundage in terms of like their knees, try to use like an assault bike or a rower if it's, especially once it gets in season. And then for like their anaerobic stuff, try to use the sled or belt squat marching. Um, but besides those and then like if they have a safety bar for squatting, most of the time I'm probably using that because their elbows and their wrists are probably so tight from all the shooting and stuff that it's going to be really like, at the end of the day, they're not powerlifters. Like, don't care how good they are doing this, as
Yeah.
long as this is good. And plus, a lot of times they have weak necks, so if I can get kind of like a 2-for-1 there, that's kind of what I'm cool with. Yeah, everything else is how it is. It's really just the individual in front of me, and it's no really different than anybody else. You
Right.
can't squat your body weight. That's the damn problem.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
For sure. So, let's kind of talk about what a typical training week looks like for a basketball player in season and out of season. Like, clearly, you're going to probably use more of the conjugate system, but let's just kind of look at like what you're thinking of. We'll just take like a high school athlete, for example, a high school or maybe even college. What that looks like in season, like what you're thinking about from like a training perspective, at least in general for most basketball players, the commonalities you're seeing, and then the same thing out of season.
Okay, so let's start like basically right now. Let's say they're about to be in season. I'd say my jumping volume is a little bit lower because obviously they're picking that up on the court. So I may, instead of like maximal vertical jumps, especially like on a jump mat or something, we're going to use box jumps more just for the softer landing. Max efforts are going to be more higher block pulls, whether they be track bar or sumo or rack pulls. The box squats are now parallel or above, no matter how good they are below. And the speed squats and speed pulls are probably more in that explosive percentage range. And the sets are probably a little bit lighter. And in turn, the rest time's a little bit lower. Their conditioning, if they were doing, let's say 6 trips of 60 yards, now it's like 3 to 4 sets of 120 to, up to 3 something, depending on how aerobically challenged the person is. More banded connective tissue work, an emphasis more on stuff that kind of doubles as mobility. So maybe more step downs, maybe more split lunges, maybe more external rotation work. Um, and the bodybuilding work is more in that like 6 to 10, maybe even 6 to 8 rep range, and the tempos are more controlled, but there's not really any slow eccentrics probably anymore. Especially like we were talking about before, the more they play, the more, especially that part, because they need to be a little bit less sore. When they kind of fresh come out of season, especially if they're not a person that's like, I have to do AAU and still play 5 days a week, I'm going to probably do a cycle or two, depending on the person, 3 to anywhere between 6 weeks, 1 to 2 of those of almost strictly probably bodybuilding because they probably lost some muscle size. And also just to give them a break on spine, just all the joints basically from playing. And before we start pushing that, they can kind of get a break. And then probably for, if they're ending in February, March, so that takes them through May. So let's say June, July, they're going to train, now transition to more like heavy sets, more kind of, you would say, similar to a powerlifting perspective, because maybe now we need to try to transition that muscle into strength, try to raise our maximal weight, and maybe also at the same breath that, so like maybe a weight is like, okay, parallel box squat, a front squat, or a Zercher squat, and then like a below parallel back squat, and then maybe it's like a high rack pull, right? And something like that. And then And then the speed day percentages are like 50, 55, 60. If it's a kid that's really weak, maybe I'm doing like brief maximal tension 2 days a week, squatting and benching, right? And kind of eliminate the speed pulls entirely. And maybe, and the reason why I may also be doing that is because the form with that kid on the deadlift isn't so good. So instead of doing like heavy sets or speed pulls, I'm doing like tempoed snatch grip deadlift or chair deadlifts because we need to actually improve their technique. And then accessory wise on the bodybuilding, I'm probably doing high tempo stuff with the conditioning's a little bit lower. And then let's say August and September, like they would now, then we're maybe taking away some of the heavier work, trying to increase our vertical a little bit more, pushing the jumps and the sprints, lowering the hypertrophy a little bit, and pushing the anaerobic conditioning work. And then right before that season kind of start or tryouts, especially the person that's like on the fence of trying out, I mean, of making the team in that October, we're maybe pushing the aerobic, pushing the anaerobic, and really doing almost only explosive work when it comes to the barbell, shorter, specific kind of Anderson squats and high box squats, and depending if they need more elasticity work, plyos, or pushing the vertical. And that's kind of like how the year generally kind of looks.
Cycle through. Yeah.
Yeah.
So knowing how you have that all laid out, what do you see as their, like, I guess, main weaknesses that the average basketball players have? We kind of talked about, like, the hip mobility aspect of them, like, getting low, but in terms of, like, if there's a couple, like 3 to 5 things that you're like commonly seeing with all your basketball players, what are those weaknesses that you're seeing?
It's I think it's like a lot of the high. I mean, it's kind of basketball is one of those ones. I don't think people realize it's probably even more than soccer. There's even more of an aerobic component, and there's a ton of anaerobic, and then there's still the same problem where they have a history of not lifting. So, especially as they get older, you'll see guys that will lift weights, but it's almost only upper body, and a lot of it is just bench and like arms. So their backs usually are incredibly weak from top to bottom. And what you'll see guys that not only, yes, their hips is why they can't get in good position, but their lower backs are giving out. So you have a strength endurance problem in the spine from top to bottom, right? So I think a beneficial thing for them to do, and the lats too, because that's going to support you in all the shooting and the passing. So you want to do a lot of iso holds for that, whether it be reverse hyper, the back extension. Reverse hyper, iso holds are my favorite because that's really getting the whole thing, because they need isometric kind of strength for the whole backside. So you're kind of doing 2 birds, 1 stone right there. Same thing if you did it with the back extension. But even like iso holds at like the midway point of like your pull-ups and stuff like that. Triceps being really weak despite needing them to be extremely strong, because you're doing snapping all the time like if you were a boxer. It's just that you're throwing a ball, you're shooting a ball, right? Glutes being weak and underdeveloped, and that probably contributing to back pain. A lot of times knee pain, because you see like their quads naturally from all the decelerating, which is constantly the sport. The quads are decently usually developed, but the hamstrings are extremely lacking. And it's funny, you'd probably be surprised. It's not so much pure strength in the calf, but the strength endurance will be extremely low. Like you could be like, hey, I'm going to make you do a tempo of like 3 or 4 down with a pause and just control it up in a pause. And like you'll see guys that, because they've never done it, their calves quickly cramp up with very, very light weight. And you're like, well, that could also be contributing because that's supporting the knee as well. Yeah. Feet being fucked up because this being in the super tight shoes that are really, really narrow all the time. So that's kind of something that I've been diving more into, is the ankle mobility, but trying to also fix the function of the toes. So the arch, a lot of them have collapsed arches, even like pretty early. So yeah, I would say it's pretty much like a lot of athletes. It's like you got to fix the entire posterior chain, and like we talked about earlier, the mobility of the hips. A lot of times the shoulder too, especially the shooting shoulder, you'll see like the difference between the shoulders, whether it's internal, external rotation, can be crazy. And then lack of function in the ankles, which is important because, a lot of guys are saying, try to say that they have no background. Will be like, they're channeling their Achilles because of the shoes. I'm like, I never tore my Achilles whether I wore high top or low top. But you see a lot of guys from wearing ankle braces or taping the ankles or, uh, tying that shoe so tight and just not doing anything to get their knee over their toe, their ankle's really compromised and then their foot doesn't function right. So I think from that perspective too, like you want to pay attention to kind of those three joints that I said.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Do you have any issues get with the buy-in with the knee over the toes from any of your athletes or parents?
No, because what's funny, like the guys, like the knee over toe guy that doesn't give Pollock credit, but a lot of those guys have made that stuff as part of the popular terms to use, fluffy stuff that they love to do that. It's still the part of, wait, you're back squatting, wait, you're benching, wait, you're deadlifting. That's where they start giving you pushback. But if you start saying, oh, look, the knee over toe, they've seen videos on it. They've seen their favorite player, whether it's basketball or another sport, doing it. So they have, they don't care about a medicine ball. They don't care about that. When it comes to like the clanging and banging weights, that's where they usually like, like, wait, coach, is my back supposed to be pumped up on this exercise, aka the reverse hyper? Yes, your back's weak. Yes, it'll happen. It's all right. So it's kind of that stuff, that they have more of the problem.
Yeah, I think, from the basketball players that we've worked with, especially like at the high school level, like when they're lifting with the team, as you mentioned, it's just so generic of just like maybe they're doing squat, bench, some arm work, like you mentioned. Maybe they'll do some dumbbell rows, they'll do some lunges. Like it's so generic. And the number one thing that I see an issue, at least around our area, I'm not sure about yours, is just that how undersized they are. They say they lift weights, and I'm like, you get bodied all the time. And I understand you're tall and you're lankier, but if you're in the weight room as much as you say you are at school, I would like to think that you've got a little bit more muscle mass on there. What is when you're working with these guys, what are you talking to them about on like the nutrition front? Because clearly they obviously have a high motor. Most of them do anyways, have a high motor and can burn through a lot of calories, especially if they're shooting maybe 2 or 3 times a day or doing something basketball related 2 or 3 times a day, sometimes in season. What do those conversations look like of trying to portray the value of quality nutrition to not only build the muscle, but also play ball better?
Yeah, my wife is actually finishing her two master degrees. One of them is in clinical nutrition. So I actually have her talk to the athletes that are interested, and I'm sure that's one of the things you've harped on, where it's like you'll ask the player, what did you eat? And they're like Dunkin' Donuts and a cream cheese bagel. And then it's funny, in her like research, what they've been finding, they have there's like a new eating disorder. I can't remember the name, but it's basically where kids will only eat quote unquote healthy stuff. And in turn, they undereat. So like kids will be like, I'm not ever eating Taco Bell or KFC. And I'm like, well, I'd rather you eat that than just salads and avocado toast where you get no protein. That's like the funny, like new thing now that I see it. I'm like, great. And you got a pencil neck. I don't care what sport you are. If you have no muscle, good luck. Like I see some of these kids, and I see that even with football players now. And down here in Georgia,
yeah,
the difference between that kid and the kids that are playing for Texas, Georgia, or Florida college school, it's like they make them, they're like half their size. I'm like, your biggest problem is that you're just underweight, bro. But it's like even for basketball, there's that thing too where kids will think, oh, that's right. If they gain any weight, which is why they don't want to lift weights, that they won't be able to jump high or run fast. Because I will say that a lot of your highest jumpers, especially in the sport of basketball, are on the thinner side. Like a Ja Morant, he's like 6'3". I think he weighs like 175. And it's real skinny. But what people don't understand, it's not because he's skinny. The dude is a genetic freak. And yes, he's light. But like when I try to, you know, explain to them, it's, mass specific force. So I've had athletes gain 20 or 30 pounds slowly, over a year or two period. But in that time, their vertical go up 10 or so inches. So I say, so what's the problem with the mass? I say, a Miles Garrett is out jumping vertically most NBA basketball players and will outweigh them at the same height by 80 or plus pounds. That's mass specific force. So I try to, tell them it's like, especially like, it's really easy when you're that young, your hormones are through the roof. If you just eat your body weight in protein, you're gonna gain quality size. If you don't consume obviously a bunch of fat on top of that. But it's like I try to get them to like, hey, just biggest thing, don't go 4 or 5 hours before and after practicing and not eating. If we can start there, that would be great. If you can bring extra food with you to school with you, especially if they have crap lunch and breakfast, that'll help. If you can at least just do an extra protein shake and an extra sandwich where you're getting another maybe 50, 80 grams on top of the 50, 80 grams you're getting, and you weigh 160, there you go, you got 160. So for a lot of them, it's like, can we do the bare minimum? But as you know, it's the same thing with doing extra skill work, getting in the weight room more than the requirement. The food is another component. I've had few athletes be like, first of all, ask the question, or when they ask, my favorite thing, ask the question, I tell them they need to eat more and don't give me attitude. They say, oh, really? Okay, what do I need to do? Oh, really? Your wife will help me out? I've had kids where I say, my wife will literally just give you the macros that you need for free. Still won't do it.
Yeah.
But you see the difference. There's a lot of people that don't know. It's like your genetics aren't as shitty as you think. Just like with Gen Pop, your genetics and your metabolism isn't the end all be all. It's really that you want to eat cake and ice cream 90% of the time. If you just switch that, or just say 70% of the time, if you switch that and say 30% of the time I'm going to eat like crap, but 70% of the time I'll eat good, I bet you'll look way better. Not even talking bodybuilder level. So a lot of times with athletes, and especially they're young, they don't know if they did not the bare minimum, but just like literally just tried a little bit and put some thought and just follow consistently, they'd be so much stronger, powerful. And what I try to really tell them is that you'll recover faster if you do this.
Yeah.
Then let's not get started on sleep, because maybe that's even more of an issue. Because now kids with the social media is getting more and more prevalent, and school is getting longer and more intense. But then you got to practice the same. Kids are sleeping like I know kids that sleep for 4 or 5 hours. Where I'm like, shoot, I can't argue with that energy drinking coffee in the morning, because you wouldn't get through your day of classes if you did.
Yeah.
But it's like, could you try to sleep more? Like, I know that means after homework and after practice, you basically can't talk to your friends really. You need to go to bed. But like, that's what it's going to take, especially since your genetics aren't elite, to just get away with it, which is what we mostly see. So, we try your best, but like, if you got, however many kids you have, you only got so much energy to like repeat yourself and say, like, at the end of the day, it's just because you just don't want to do that. Because that's not fun. Like, I know it's personally not fun. It's not fun to eat good,
Yeah, I think for the kids too, that they don't understand is that, at least the younger ones, and maybe it's just basketball. Basketball, unlike other sports, the college roster is so small
Yeah.
compared to football or
Mhm.
baseball, or basically any other sport that's at the collegiate level. Is probably one of the smallest actual rosters that's out there. And when you
Yeah.
get the NBA, it's even smaller. But also what they don't understand too is that because of that, basketball is incredibly popular, and you have a lower scholarship offer rate or opportunities at the collegiate level. And then on top of that, you talk about how competitive it is from a scene perspective. They have to probably understand now that you've got to actually want to do this. Like every decision
Mhm.
that you're making from probably 6th, 7th, 8th grade on, if collegiate basketball is the aspiration at a minimum, obviously someone would probably want to go pro, but we'll just say collegiate basketball at the bare minimum is the aspiration that you want. And we know that the average high school kid, it's like less than 3% even go on to play college sports. So you got to do you got to be in the top 97% every single day, not from just a skills perspective, but from what you're eating, what you're sleeping, how you're strength training, putting your nose into the books, going to bed on time as soon as you're done, not being on social media, not making dumbass decisions outside the classroom. Like that's incredibly stressful. But I think some kids nobody tells them that framework of this is what it takes. And the strength training piece, obviously our expertise is like, this is one of the free quote unquote free easier pieces that you can do if you're just willing to put the work in, and then the nutrition and the sleep stacks onto it. Now when you actually, like you said, go to play or do anything else basketball related, you at least can say that guy might have naturally better skill than me. That's for sure going to happen. You're never going to be the best basketball player, LeBron James, Michael Jordan, Steph Curry, whatever. But you can say I did everything else to hang there with him. That might benefit you in the long run, because from a recruiting perspective, they know there's talented kids. They have no problem finding those. Some schools now are like, what kids are going to still be talented junior, senior year or mature after the portal, whatever. I mean, are you seeing that in the basketball players that you're working with? They're having a hard time understanding that framework?
Yeah, and the other thing is that I think it's across all sports. Like I think people get mad because they want to, it's the popular thing is to compare errors. But if you want to you can argue skill all you want. I'm not going to argue that. I've watched Kyrie Irving dribble a ball. No one dribbles it better. Okay, and it goes from there. And shooting and all that technique, everything keeps improving. Yes, almost every sport is getting a little softer, but that's because they want players to play for a very long time, because that equals dollars. So don't get mad at the players. But when it comes to athletics, all you got to do is look at the combine. The numbers and the records get broken every single year. That means the pool of athletes. I mean, now we're giving scholarships for powerlifting. Same thing.
Yeah.
The pool of athletes is getting larger. And for a sport like basketball or soccer that's international, you best believe on a college and a pro level, they're going to keep adding more and more competition with now not only within the country, but outside the country. So you're not just dealing with the best athletes in your local state and the country. Now you're dealing with the pool of athletes grows every year from overseas. And the thing that the overseas players have over the players here is that because they're not playing, I'm sure you probably heard this, the AAU thing, that your kids are not practicing and then as much, so their skills not enhancing. And then also they're picking up bad habits by playing in these leagues, but also they literally have basketball school over there. Now, places like down here, we have OTE, where 4 hours out of the day, you do schoolwork. And then 4 out of the other 4 to 6 hours a day, you literally have chefs on staff, you watch basketball film, and you do basketball. Overseas does that in every country all over the place now. Like that is the thing. That's why a Jokic, a Doncic can't jump over a textbook, but their skill and IQ is so crazy because they're learning the real way how to analyze the game and play chess, because that's what basketball is from an early age. So it's like you have to, you got to do that much more, which is why like it's kind of like being successful in anything. I think right now the pool will keep getting better. Unfortunately, not everybody has the attitude or talent. You got to have both to be successful or great in these things. And it's becoming harder and harder. Just like it's harder to own a home than it was in the 50s. It's not $10,000 down. It's you know what I mean? It's the same thing where it's just like, if you want this extraordinary goal that gives you extraordinary benefits from doing it, you have to sacrifice early and earlier. And that's why, like, I'm kind of glad they didn't, because they were worried about head trauma. But like my body type, mentality, and height is all would have been probably way better if I was a running back, not basketball. But it's like that's where it comes to let your kid play multiple sports early, so we can find out what sport do you actually have the physical talent and the typical ideal makeup, and does your mentality match? And do you have fun playing that sport? Because if you don't have fun playing that sport, the days you don't want to do it, you won't do it. You have to, I think Mike Tyson said something famously like, you have to, oh God, it was something like, you gotta want to do the things to get better. You gotta want to do the things that are boring or meticulous, or on the days that you don't want to do it and you still do it as if you're just as thrilled on the days that you want to, because that's just what it's going to take to get to that, every level. Like you said, you said like 3% make it in college. I think it was 7% maybe when I was trying to go for college, and that's 12 years ago. And it's like, okay, I was in the 7%, and I made D3 the first year and D2 the second year. The next cutoff involves more height, more athletics, and probably even better genetics and a little bit more dedication. And then if you're talking go pro, it's even more. And then, like I was telling this on another podcast, it's like, okay, you make it. Do you make it past your rookie contract? Okay, you made it past your rookie contract. Can you become an all-star? Okay, you became an all-star. Can you become an all NBA or all pro? Okay, can you make it in the Hall of Fame? And then can you be one of the players that, like I like to say, your girlfriend doesn't watch the sport but knows who you are? Those all require different levels of sacrifice. And most kids don't know they could play college probably if they just picked the right sport and they were dedicated. But like those two things are harder than I guess you could, harder than saying it,
Yeah. Yeah. So what is you kind of brought it up, AAU. What's your take on AAU? Like what was it? I obviously kind of know what it's like now working with some of the kids that I have. And I mean, crazy enough as it sounds, I played basketball through 8th grade year, as short as I am. But, and there weren't travel teams, but, I was on like the local all-star team that traveled around the state. There was only one team. I was the B point guard. I wasn't the starting point guard, but I did see minutes. But after that, I found wrestling, and that was, like you said, trying different sports. I found something I was much better at with really to go, But what's I guess I want to get your take on AAU right now. Like what do you think? Pros, cons? Is it a positive for the game of basketball? Is it a negative for the game of basketball? Is it a positive for the individual kid? Is it a negative? I guess kind of give me some information on that.
It's one of those things where it's like, it's good idea. And then when you put it in practice, it gets abused like a lot of systems, like you could say, like with government, it just gets abused. Somebody that's out or doing the job for the wrong reasons, and then the people that are supposed to benefit aren't benefiting. And then you got the whole thing where parents and kids now attaching with social media and likes, like, oh, you got to be on one of the teams to get scouted. It's kind of like just how baseball became, where it's like the high school basketball matters less than the AAU does, or travel baseball. And so, like, I think when I was playing, and I played AAU a little bit, it was like just the weekends, but you would play like 1 or 2 games, except it was one of the big tournaments. But the focus was, especially during the week, working with a skill coach or whatever and working on your skills. But also the games were ref officiated, and the push was to learn how to actually play basketball and hopefully get with coaches that you normally wouldn't reach, that don't want to do high school, because you don't get any basically pay at that level, but you get better coaching. I see too much where the focus is celebrations after they score. There's not any emphasis on defense. And you could say part of that is because they're watching the NBA, which has gotten away from tough defense, especially in the regular season. But I think, the abuse of like how much money there is in AAU, that people aren't doing quality coaching, and they're not doing the best for what the kid in the long term. They're celebrating what will get them as a coach views and progress for their career in the short term over the kid's long term development. So it's like, I think it can be good, but there's definitely need to be alterations. And I know that Adam Silver has talked about using the junior NBA, which is like the youth programs that they have with every team, to kind of help or make their own kind of version of AAU, but make it where like we're actually going to really teach you how to play, like not only to play basketball, but like appropriate to your level. So like when you're going for your middle school tryout, this is typically what the game is like. Or then you're going middle school to high school, this is what it would be like. when you're in high school, this is what it looked like for college because all those levels and then college to NBA, the games are a little bit different. So if a coach isn't training you to be prepared for that next level, but advertising that's what he's preparing you for, whether on purpose or because he's for greed, that's the wrong thing. So like, like people always get on Calipari, who was the Kentucky coach for a while. Now he's at
Arkansas now.
University Arkansas. It's like, oh, he never wins, but people love going to him because he prepares you for the next stage. He gets you paid, and he gets you prepared for that. Because at the end of the day, nowadays, unless if you're not that good, you're not even in now with NIL. You're going to leave for the bigger money in the NBA. So I want to actually prepare you for what that game is like. Like people always be like that don't understand basketball. Yes, I wish the defense. I feel like optimal was the 2000s. I think where that was where you could kind of hand check, but if you breathed on someone, it wasn't a foul like it is now. Now it's like if you're a defender, you just can't get paid because they don't care because a lot of guys don't have to play defense. But it's like, dang, now I lost what I was saying. uh, with the college game, they think the defense is better, and that's because you can play, especially a 3-2 zone. But if you don't get guys prepared to guarding their player one-on-one, both from a conditioning perspective, but from not getting lazy, learning how to handle backdoor cutting, screen and roll and not standing around just pass the ball and wait for somebody to shoot, they're not going to be prepared in transition. That's why they always have the age-old saying, there's a lot of guys, the reason why they're staying is because the NBA scouts or players or coaches will say, your game is not going to correlate to the NBA because all of a sudden you can't just be a 3 and D, but your D relies on somebody bailing you out. So on across all levels, especially at the early level for AAU, that's one of those things where like I think we need, like we talk about like with strength conditioning, there's certifications and there's ways to like say like, oh, my coach actually knows what he's doing. And when it comes to skill coaching, it's like if you played at a high level, automatically people assume that you know what you're doing. And I think you have a lot of guys that not only don't know what they're doing, and then you're adding in they're only in it for the money. Because I mean, some of these AAU, it's like, oh, $1,000 a month or something. I'm like, what the? To learn what? This kid still doesn't know how to do a press break. Yeah, they're not even practice. I'm like, for jerseys and just to play? And we still got to pay for our own travel as the parent? Oh, that's no.
Yeah. I mean, I think the way that I kind of almost see it, I mean, you can tell me if you think otherwise, but I think the reason AAU looks so attractive right now is because, like you mentioned, the level or the way they play the ball at the AAU level is more likely to transfer into college, where the high school basketball style of play is one, it's legitimate team ball. Until you get to, maybe a school that's got like 1 or 2 kids that are like Division I and everybody else is kind of like a nobody, then obviously the ball goes to those 1 or 2 players significantly more. But generally speaking, it's much more team-driven basketball than it is trying to just set up an individual where, like, when you go to AAU, everybody's kind of out there maybe showboating, showing off their skills or whatever, and the defense is a little bit less because everybody's just trying to make a highlight reel to put on Huddle or whatever to get recruited. And you don't really get that in high school basketball because I feel like everybody's out there actually trying to kind of play hard and the style of ball is different. Does that sound like that's probably a good take?
Yeah, and I think too, it's like coaching and players, you can get popular, famous notoriety from not even winning just from the highlights. Whereas like a coach for high school to win states or nationals, it's going to be a team versus a team. And then, yes, when plays break down, end of fourth quarter, who does have the better individual player? But really good players at any level, their practices should be able to correlate and carry over to games in high school and college where it's little things where you can lose games on 3 backdoor cuts because you're the person that spaces out. It's little things on out of bounds plays that you're confident in, the play number 1, but do you panic on the pass in? It's little stuff like that that a lot of skill coaches won't teach the player. but it's those little things that at higher level basketball, because most of you aren't going to be the guy that's at college or in the NBA, that's their goal, their job is to score 20. Your goal is to make the open shot, not turn over the ball, and not have easy mistakes made on defense. But it's like those are the little things that it also have, then it falls on the skill trainer that you're working with. Are they teaching you those little things that carries over? And then also it's like you'll watch a lot of NBA players. I think it's the same thing happens when they do strength training in the weight room. They only see like the highlights or the fluff, but they won't see the majority of their work, like from an offensive standpoint, is meant to be done so that you can score in 3 seconds or less. So if your skill work, you know who James Harden is?
Yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah. So if your skill work is like you think you're going to play like James Harden, I got news for you. You're not talented probably enough to get away with dribbling for 20 damn seconds. If you can't do everything with 2 to 3 dribbles, which is what your practice is from a one-on-one perspective, that's how your game should be, then you're probably never going to be a good enough offensive player because your habit will be, it's just about me and no one else. But in a team perspective, especially at those higher levels in high school and college, you need to be to quickly score or you're passing the ball. Do something or give it up and go. And then it's like, okay, when you do your skill work, especially if you're in a group, do you utilize that and say, I do a move, I pass, that person gets the shot, but now I know how to back, I cut, I come back through, I get a shot and I shoot. You know why Curry's amazing? He exhausts guys from constant moving. He will, like, I've heard players, plenty of NBA players say, I'd rather guard Kyrie than I'd guard Steph because it's way more exhausting guarding Steph, which means Steph is getting away with mostly 2 to 3 dribble moves if he kind of has to, and everything else is a catch and a shot or a catch and you fly by and he's doing 1 to 2 dribbles, floater or jump shot. That isn't mixtape. That is IQ of knowing when, how to cut, knowing where your team is, knowing when I'm supposed to go, plus the conditioning. And then he does practice because you see when he has to, he can break you down. But a lot of times the guys are only focusing on the highlight moves, step backs, and all that stuff. But then they can't do the basic stuff, and that's why they can't get playing time. So it's like if it takes you 5 dribbles to score and you can never do 1 or 2, you wonder why you can't get playing time, because if most of your plays involve a pick and roll and you either got to pass it or you got to shoot it and you can't do it that quickly, the coach is going to seat you. Even if you're a guy less talented than you, can't do what you can do in that sense, but he can run the play and quickly be effective. So it's like it's a lot of factors where it's like the skill coach and the AU coach and then the parent to be smart enough to see that. But like I said, I feel like we need a better system to get qualified people to actually coach at these younger levels because they are the base.
Yeah.
Right. Like it's our job as a strength coach that if I have you for a period of time, especially for a few years before you go to college, you should know how to do all the common movements correctly. Like I don't like maybe I don't know about you, but I don't teach the Olympic lifts. I'm not an Olympic lifting guy. Every time I think about, well, maybe I should learn more. And I did them for about 6 or 7 months under a guy that came from one of those Ukrainian countries. And he's a physical therapist and strength coach. So he was very qualified. But I didn't see the same results doing that as I did when I got the Westside system. And I just know from working with a lot of athletes, it takes them forever to learn how to squat, bench, and deadlift. So I just prefer to say, then I'm not going to do Olympic lifts. But it's like, besides those, if you really can't do hinging, squatting, benching, pull-ups, push-ups well, and you're not establishing good base of muscle everywhere, it's on us. So it should be the same thing where it's like you can't be doing skill work with a player and their offhand is crap compared to their strong hand. Oh, you can't do a left-hand layup in your right-handed player. Little stuff like that. It's like, well, what have you been doing?
Yeah. Yeah. And something I kind of joke around with my wife or even some of their kids that I work with, if they say they're on an AAU team or they got a buddy that's on an AAU team, I'm like, how is somebody on an AAU team, but they're not on varsity? That to me is a telltale sign that you're focusing on the wrong thing. You don't need to go play AAU. You clearly lack, like you said, fundamental skills to be able to make a varsity roster. Now, maybe there's an exception if you're a freshman. I'll give that a pass. But, you should at least be on the JV team if you're good enough. But that to me just says like you're chasing a clout and a ability to like say I'm wearing this jersey or with this team where like the real players are actually good enough. Yes, they probably are playing AU as well, but they're also playing varsity. So if you are paying this money for this AAU program and you're not developing your skills, like we mentioned, you're probably not even practicing. You're just traveling and playing together. One, it's a waste of money. Two, you could just literally go outside and work on your skill development and then hire somebody else to help you with maybe your IQ or when NBA's on or college on, like maybe sit down and just actually watch the game, like watch what's happening on the court and try to break down what went well with that player, what didn't, versus just traveling the country. I mean, I get some of it's playing with your friends, but again, if college ball is actually really what you want to do, I think being a student of the game is important. So the last couple of things I got here, just I call them bonus rounds. So it's just 5 questions, super simple, 30 to 60 seconds answers all it really takes. And going back off the basketball was my first one is, what's the biggest mistake that you think is in youth basketball right now?
Probably not playing more than one sport and not having an off season. So I think that doubles with the AU. You should have an off season where you prioritize developing more as an athlete and developing your skills instead of constantly playing. So it's like I was just going to say, adding on to what we were just talking about, it's like try to find, if you can, the next level group that has a local private run. So if you're a high school kid, if you have a coach that you're working with, say like, do you train any college guys? Do you think I could get in on the run? I know I'll probably only play one game, but then you can see firsthand, just like watching film, but even better, how far behind you are athletically and from a skill perspective. So I
Awesome.
think in the offseason you need to focus on that.
Awesome. If you had to choose, are we keeping social media around for sports performance strength conditioning, or are we getting rid of social media?
Well, I would say you keep it because good coaches, then you can reach people that may be in an area. I think I know now almost a good coach in almost every state, but I mean, hey, if it's Texas, it could be in the top part of your state. That's 5 hours away. But if you could get a coach online that's really good and qualified, I think you're only probably going to get that now through social media. It makes it obviously even easier than having a website just because the navigation is easy. Um, so I like it. It's just, but the problem is with like any information on social media, a talent of sifting through BS versus good is a skill. And I always tell people, all you need to do to prove to me is that that coach shows before and after progression of that person. If they
Right.
only are showing just individual fluff, cute workouts, and like my kids that go to college and they never test their vertical, something's off. I don't hide the progress I make with my kids. That's all over my page for a reason, because I want to say like, no, you can't argue with me because look, this person's vertical squat or bench went up, blah blah blah.
Awesome. Give me about 3 to 5 coaches or mentors that have influenced your strength and conditioning approach.
Louis number one. Mark Deppen from Donovan Catholic. Nate Harvey, who you know. Probably Joe Lasco because I got the first hand approach of Westside and he trained me. So that was like my first like real deep dive. Brandon Byrd of ByrdSports Performance, you may know him.
Yep.
Jared Bitney of Explosive Mechanics, who's down here. Those are probably my like major ones because my main focus is athletics. If I was adding in powerlifting, it probably would be Swede Burns because I worked with him for a little bit and his book is like really digestible when it comes to powerlifting, just from a powerlifting standpoint.
Yeah, for sure.
And then I could say like, yeah, that's that. Yeah, I would say that's it. Yeah, those are like my top guys. Like I constantly kind of look at their stuff.
Gotcha. So last one, if you could snap your finger and change one thing in our field or industry, what would it be and why? For the greater or for worse, if it's something bad you want to make better, or just something that you want to see happen.
I wish there was a better filtration system when it came to hiring people. I think that needs to change because, like I said, people shouldn't make six figures at the college, even high school, some of these private schools down here, and in the pros, and clearly not getting results. They're just there because maybe they have a certain certification or degree beside their name. And that goes back to, like, right now, I'm going to finally, because cancer's gone, I can finally finish the last 2 years of my degree, but it's going to be in business. It won't be in anything in the exercise science field because everyone I talk to says, I didn't learn shit from it. So I'm not going to waste my time. But it's disgusting that a lot of kids that don't know that, like when I've gotten to work with, I have two guys that are now coaches at my old gym. They were our interns. They learn more when they were interning than they did at school. You shouldn't leave with that and not know the damn job. So, like I remember I was listening to Pollock when I think he got his degree, physiology, master's, and he was like, I learned virtually nothing from there. It was a waste of time. That's disturbing. But I mean, we see that in other fields too.
Yeah.
So I think that probably would be nice because it's like, all right, you have to like sift and find the right certifications to find stuff. And it's like, okay, a piece of the whole puzzle, another
Yeah.
piece, another, you know what I mean? That's probably the biggest problem because then you wouldn't need to argue with people because everybody will be like, oh, the science from this place isn't different than the science from somewhere else.
Yep.
So
Yep.
that's probably what I would change.
I would agree with that. All right. So where can people find you and learn more about what you do, and I guess kind of let people know how they can get a hold of you?
Yeah, mostly I just use Instagram, and that's Kalil Sherrod, KALIL_SHERROD on Instagram. Through there, you can just DM me for training. If you're a coach that's like a young coach that wants to learn anything or have questions, especially for basketball, you can ask me. Also, like if you want a copy of my ebook, the Basketball Players Training Guide, that goes into basketball drills for every position, recovery, and sample programs in there. You can just DM me and you can get it from there. I believe soon in the coming year, mostly just because I can afford it, I'm going to launch my own app. So then I can have people that, maybe can't afford a full individualized program per month, but at least want some good programs for depending on the age and depending on the sport. I have like tons that I'm basically just kind of making right now. So that'll be available soon. But and I'll probably and that app will also be double as a website. So all that will be coming soon. But yeah, the best way to reach me is on there. I have the same name on TikTok, but I don't really use it as much. I pretty much just will repost what I do on Instagram on
Yeah.
there. I know it's not what you're supposed to do, like dancing videos, but but yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate it, man. If you're listening, again, check out Khalil's stuff. He's got really good stuff. Every time we've talked, it's always been great talking shop. I feel like I always take something away. It's appreciate your time. I learned a lot here today, going into the deep dives of basketball with you and hearing how you're kind of doing stuff, and excited to see what you got going on next in life, man.
Yes, sir. Thank you. It was awesome being on.
All right. Thanks, man.